Please rise. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. All right. So let me start off by saying that this is a celebration. However, our profession has its traditions, and those traditions are sprouted from solemn, noble, and honorable roots. We just performed one of those ceremonial traditions by recognizing our state and national flags. Another tradition is to take a moment of solemn silence and cast our thoughts briefly inward on the ultimate sacrifice members of our profession have paid. According to the National Law Enforcement Memorial, in 2020, there were 417 in the line of duty deaths. In 2021, 623. And in 2022, 224. Of note, these include COVID-related deaths. Today, we sit or stand in a room dedicated to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We all recognize this sacrifice as a possibility each day we put on a badge, say goodbye to our families, and walk out the door. We also want to take a moment to remember the life and legacy of Assistant Chief Pierce, who passed on March 25th. We have the watch from here, so please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. I'd like to welcome and bring up Pastor Feathers for our invocation.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our law enforcement officers. We thank you for this staff, Chief Scott, to all of the lieutenants, captains, and officers. We thank you, Lord, for being good to us and keeping us all day long. Thank you for their heroic hearts and their heroic acts. Keep us safe each day. Keep us from all evil and protect them from the evil. I ask that you would protect them and keep them with supernatural care and supernatural protection. And I ask that, Lord, you would give them wisdom and encouragement throughout their day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you, Pastor Feathers. All right, so I'd like to take a moment to recognize a few people in our room here today. So, I don't know if anybody realizes it, but this is the 2020 through 2023 Gainesville Police Department award ceremony. So you're kind of getting like a 3-for-1 deal here. So that's pretty good, right? Food and a 3-for-1 deal. So you can tell everybody you went to the last 3 years. So we haven't had an award ceremony since the pandemic, since we had to postpone them since the pandemic. And as you can imagine, putting together an award ceremony that covers 3 years is quite a task. So I'd like to take a moment to thank some of those instrumental people for putting this together. And their hard work does not go unnoticed. So first of all, Miss Deborah Holt. I believe Ted Bradford has something special for her.
Yes, we want to recognize Miss Deborah. Without her, you wouldn't be here today. She put all of this together. She made all of the programs. She pretty much ran the committee the whole time. She organized the catering, the DJ, invitations and everything. And without her, she was pretty much a committee of one. So thank you for a great job in putting all of this together.
All right, some other honorable mentions. Miss Kendall Lambert. Miss Patty Barrett. I don't know if she's here. Miss Pam Miles. Miss Olivia Williams, they're in the back. A few that took away or took some time out of their normal duties for facilities, Mr. Eric Johnson and Mr. Anthony Cleckley. Captain Anthony Ferrara. Lieutenant Summer Kirkow. I think it's somewhere around here. Lieutenant Renee Guyan. And Corporal Amy Owens, who provided the wonderful balloon decor you see in front of you. So a little more tradition before we get rolling here. We'd also like to thank and recognize the dignitaries in the room who took a little time out of their busy schedules to celebrate with us. So we welcome City Manager, Madam Cynthia Curry. We have Undersheriff Joel DeCourcy, Colonel Chad Scott, Major Lance Yeager. I thought I saw Captain Josh Cruz somewhere around here. Captain Chris Sims. Chief/City Commissioner. Ed Book, are you a commissioner tonight or are you the chief of this? Some members of our State Attorney's Office, Assistant State Attorney Michael Becker. Chief Investigator Derry Lloyd. No, he's somewhere around here. And the chief is creeping up on me, so am I forgetting somebody? And our GPD command staff. Yeah, go on, okay. Captain Paris Owens, the CID commander, she's somewhere around here. Captain Anthony Farrar with our Patrol Support Bureau. Chief Inspector Jamie Kernick. Chief Tony Jones. There he is, in the doorway back there. Chief Lonnie Scott. Oh, and Miss Evelyn Fox is here. That's awesome. Your guys' hands are going to be tired by the end of this if you keep clapping. All right, so let's stop and think, right? 2022-ish through 2023. During the height of the pandemic, when many workers were quarantined and meeting places and offices moved from the table to the tablet, workspaces moved from desks to pillows, and we traded in our shirts and ties for pajamas. Our officers and FSTs and many of the support staff in this building never stopped working. They continued to work with now, right, the additional stressor of a virus and navigating a world where vaccines dominated our conversations. Also during this time, across America, citizens took to the streets protesting the atrocious acts of, need I remind you, a few officers. And talks of defunding the police were thick in the media and weighed heavy on many of our hearts. However, we continued to get up, put on the vest, belt, and badge and respond to every call, from noise complaints and parking lot crashes to murders and rapes. And I, for one, am proud of us for that. Needless to say, during a time where the need for appreciation, understanding, and recognition were high, officers across the nation were lumped into a category with murderers and thugs. And don't get me wrong, officers typically have a personality where we don't want ticker tape parades, not crazy about pomp and circumstance, and most of us avoid being the center of attention. But at the end of the day, we want to do our job, protect and serve the community, and rest with just a little assurance and encouragement and support that we did a job well done. So tonight is extra special. There is no doubt our profession is under the microscope and is often misportrayed by an overzealous media that wishes to sensationalize, content at every chance they can get. And we often don't get a fair shake. But you know what? For me, I would have it no other way. Because what we do is important. What we do should be scrutinized, and those that would use the badge as a shield to cover wrongdoings should be rooted out and punished. We have the power to remove the rights of an individual, and that is a great authority that should not be taken lightly. And as Peter Parker's uncle once said, everyone say it with me, with great power comes great. We are held to a higher standard for that reason. This evening, we celebrate acts that truly define our profession, not the acts some would have you believe define our profession, but what it truly means to answer the call for service every day. We celebrate acts of heroism and community service, and the reality is these acts will always truly define us and will always far outnumber the acts committed by the fraction of a percent that manage to snake their way into our profession. Tonight we celebrate what it means to be a peace officer. We have many reasons to celebrate. In fact, in the 2 to 3 year time period we will cover, over 300 individual award recipients were nominated. So we should be out of here 1, 2 a.m., if that's all right with everyone. So for the sake of time tonight, I'm going to warn you all, we will recognize those in attendance. But of course, a full list is provided to you, and we will post a full list on various social media sites. So now I'd like to turn it over to Chief Scott for a few words and some special recognitions of our community partners. Chief Scott.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's like church now. I got pastors in here. I want to take just a moment to bring to your attention that the diversity in this room, as far as everything from age, race, creed, religion, occupations, speaks about our community, because we are one community, the community of Gainesville. And we're going to recognize some folks tonight who are our partners, because we maintain that none of this is possible without you. And we have people who have worked with the Gainesville Police Department for years and asked nothing in return. No special favors, no special patrols. They've been there for us through thick and thin. From pastors to business folk to educators. I'm just amazed how we just simply engaged in that partnership, and we all have the same goal, to make sure that our community is safe, to make sure our children can walk the streets and be safe, that our elderly, which I am one of now, can walk the streets and be safe. You don't know how important that is. And I mean, think about where we are. We're in Gainesville. We're not in Memphis. We're not in some of these other places you see highlighted with trouble in the streets, disrespect from the police officer, disrespect for the police officers. We have a small fraction of people here who beat the drum that says we don't need police. But the 99% of the people that I encounter say thank you. We love you. Keep doing what you're doing. That's what counts. And so we wanted to show a little appreciation tonight because we're going to recognize our folks. To be in this profession today, to come into law enforcement today with the stigma that's being attached by the media and some foolish actors, with the stigma that's attached to this profession today, for you to enter this profession, it's a passion. You want to be a difference. You want, quite frankly, if you turn the lights on and watch these folks and have them change out real quick, you're going to see Batman, Superman, Hulk, Thor. They're all heroes. That's why they joined the profession. They wanted to save somebody's life. Many of them have, and many of them will, at the risk of losing their own lives. When there are people out there protesting against us, who's out there protecting them? We are. Who's willing to take a bullet for them? We are. So it doesn't matter what's in your mindset about how you feel about us. We feel a dedication, we feel a diligence, a duty to protect all of you. Whether we like you or not, it doesn't matter. Nothing hurts more than to see a baby, a child, a young person lose their life. If that doesn't strike you, I don't know what will. And I appreciate those that partner with us. I mean, we call on some of these pastors, Superintendent Feathers, I appreciate you. Right across the street, all I have to do is just say, can I call him today? Can I do something? Hey, no problem, just like that. You know, I want to thank you. And we're going to recognize these folks with plaques. These are over the years. I mean, we haven't taken the time out to say thank you to our business partners, to our community partners. And I want to do that tonight. So bear with us, and we're going to make it as quick as we can, but we want to make sure that we pay proper homage to them. So thank you. So first up, I want to ask Ms. Rosa B. Williams to come up. And everyone knows the legend and legacy of Ms. Rosa, okay? Ms. Rosa is the hardest working community activist servant that I have seen ever. Even today, even this day, Ms. Rosa calls me at least twice and 3 times a week, and she says, Lonnie, is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you? 3 times a week. I've got some able-bodied people walking around. If I ask them to lift up a can, that ain't gonna happen. But Ms. Rosa, she'll wheel out there and she'll do everything that she can, and I appreciate it. And I love Ms. Rosa, and she's like a family to me. And Ms. Rosa, thank you for all that you do. We can never repay you. And thank you, and Arthur, work with you. So Ms. Rosa, in typical fashion, has something for us, you know?
So Ms. Rosa wanted to make sure she acknowledged the men and women of the Gainesville Police Department, along with the command staff. And it reads, to the City of Gainesville and the Gainesville Police Department, for your continuous support and partnership providing quality crime prevention and other positive outlets for young adults, thus investing in our community, most precious commodity, our youth. March 31st, 2023. One thing we must acknowledge is that we continuously have trying times with our young people in our community, and the Gainesville Police Department and its members always stand firm with us as we meet those challenges. And we want to make sure we acknowledge you, Chief, and the command staff, and all the men and women of the Gainesville Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you to the Gainesville Police Department, because you don't know what a hard time they have in this community. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. These young people is really getting out of hand. And people scared to sit on the porch and go out, but this Gainesville Police Department standing by us, have been with us for a long time, and they're helping us. And I would like for these people to say one or two words.
Again, we appreciate the hard work that you all do day in and day out. Words cannot express the gratitude that we have for our community, keeping our community safe. We want you to know not only do we appreciate all of the work that you do, but we love you as well. Thank you.
And I'm from the Pleasant Street neighborhood, and I just wanted to say a little something. In 1946, the Gainesville Police Department hired the first African-American officer, and the Pleasant Street Neighborhood Association meets in the Oscar Lewis Annex, which is located on the corner of 1st Street and 6th Avenue. And I want to say a special thanks to Chief Scott, because in the early days when our neighborhood was going through so many transitions, she provided support and encouragement, and all the officers of GPD have been wonderful leaders. Thank you very much.
I live in the Grove Street neighborhood, which is right around the corner from here. And when we sometimes meet and GPD is there, we always tell them we love you, because we can definitely say that they have been from the days of Ed Book, when he was a member of Keep Alachua Beautiful and helped us clean up our neighborhoods, to Ernest Graham, who was for many, many years the liaison with our Crime Watch meetings, who was always gentle and listening to everything that we had to say, who actually carried my mother's coffin out of that church. To so many things where I remember one time where we had a little gathering for Gigi Simmons, who was leaving as a city commissioner, and we had it at Dreamer's Garden. And all of a sudden, I had sent invitations to a lot of people. Who comes? Well, Chief Jones, Chief Scotty, Lonnie Scott, Ernest Graham, Jamie Koenig. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, we really are important. and I remember that particular ceremony at that garden, we ended up singing a beautiful gospel song by Mahalia Jackson. And that was in the upper room. Because I am a foreigner, I am an American citizen, but these wonderful gospel singers and the Afro-American community were so special that that particular song represents to me, I don't know why, you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. I don't want to be remiss in acknowledging our partners, our law enforcement partners. You know, the Sheriff's Office, you can see in their attendance here, this is family. You know, this is family for us. The State Attorney's Office, that's family. You know, we profess that we are a family in the family of Gainesville. So that's a lot of folks around, and I think I've learned since I've been here, sometimes you meet a person and you don't know that they're related to about 5, 6 other people in the room. And I'm telling you, today that's the case. So thank you again for those folks. And now I want to get to some of these other, not to prolong the program, but I want to recognize some of our business partners, Walmart store number 538. We have a representative for Walmart, number 538. Thank you. Needless to say that, again, sometimes all we have to do is ask, and sometimes they call us and ask us, can you use this stuff? And they continually provide us with assistance and from everything with the program for Christmas where we sit down with the kids and take them through and have them heroes, shopping with heroes. I really appreciate that, and always very memorable for the kids, and we appreciate your diligence in working with us. And I know sometimes it's a little testy, but we appreciate your staff being always courteous, and thank you very much for working with us. Okay. We have another Walmart star number 3877. Do we have a representative for Walmart store number 3877? If not, I guess we'll get one of those that just sat down to come back. Walmart number 3877, we appreciate your help. Same concept is that they're partners with us, and we appreciate what they do. So, you know, if we have Walmart, then we're going to also have Target. All right? So do we have a Target representative here? Okay, we have a couple of Target folks. Again, this is our Shop with a Cop partner. Sometimes we come up to them, we have needs, and we just mention that we might be interested in something. These are not partners that just join us for one event. These are every year partners for us, and we appreciate, through COVID and everything else, they were still our partners. So thank you very much for your help.
Look right here, please. Smile, 3, 2, 1. Thanks.
Elio. We want to have Elio come up, and Elio is, you know, again, one of our community partners. He come up and he just offered, the first time I met him, he was offering food and music, and he's an inspiration, making sure that we can have a good outreach for our Hispanic community and making sure that we have a way to communicate effectively and that we understand some of the needs and desires that they have and really removing some of the barriers. And Elio will play that music for us anytime. And not just that, but come out and partner with us and really help us as far as podcasts and everything else. And we thank you for everything that you've done for us. Thank you.
Everybody look here. Look here. 3, 2, 1. Nice.
Pablo Aringo. So Pablo, again, one of those people that help us out, and Pablo works for Save a Lot, and we've had several occasions where we had to call on him and ask for things from turkeys to food that we were going to use to feed our officers or that we were going to give away. And he's been a constant partner for us, and I can't let it go by. I have to be transparent. That's my in-law to my son, and that's my granddaughter that's right there, that's hiding. So thank you, Pablo, for all that you do, and thank you for Save a Lot.
Nice. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Beautiful.
Next, I'm going to confess again, this is family for me. Mr. Joel Islam. Is he here? Any representative from Ben Keith? Okay. We'll hold this for him, make sure that Joel gets it. Superintendent Kenyatta Feathers. Again, this is one of our chaplains. Also the pastor of Williams Temple across the street. We use his facilities for various functions and always there for us and always reaching out to assist the officers and partnering us with food giveaways and everything else. So, a man of God, and we thank you for being with us and appreciate all that you do. I also want to recognize Reverend Carl Anderson. I don't think he made it yet. He was on his way. I don't think he made it, but again, another one of our community partners and does quite a bit for us with the church. We've had gun buys at his location. Same with Pastor Feathers, you know, taking guns off the street, trying to make sure that we keep our community safe. Next is definitely blood for me. This is Joe Cerulli. And have Joe come up, and want to recognize Joe for his contributions to the Gainesville Police Department, which can't be costed out because it's more than just for providing facilities for us, it's providing support and forever being there. And one of the first business people to step up when we were going through hard times. And I thank him, and he is family for me, and we appreciate him being here and all that he does, and really the whole Cerulli family. So thank you, Joe. Okay. I think I've gone through all, right, at this point. Is this where I turn it back over?
Chief's a little taller than me. Okay, and now our presentation for our department members. So, all right, so a little caveat, right? We got a lot of awards to go through, so bear with me. So follow along. The awards are separated by the incident and the type of award, okay? So therefore, there may be multiple categories of awards for the same incident. So the back of your awards program has the award definition, if you would like to follow along as I read them. So for our award recipients, as I call your name, please come to the front of the room where you will be presented with your certificate and, of course, have your photo taken with the chief. Once your photo is taken, please take your seat. He's creeping up on me again. Okay. So for the first award presentation, I'd like to call up Sally and I believe Katie Dahlem are both here. Yes? Please come up. This will be for the presentation of the Corey Dahlem Mentorship Award. So before I bring up the award recipients, on April 3rd, 2007, during the University of Florida National Championship celebration, Lieutenant Corey Spoon Dahlem was struck by an intoxicated motorist and killed. Lieutenant Dahlem was very special at GPD and will most be remembered for his love of family, both blood and blue, his love for the Gainesville community, and his desire to make sure that the officers of GPD had everything they needed to be successful. Lieutenant Dahlem believed in mentorship and would not hesitate to sit down with you and work out a plan to help you meet your goals. In 2017, on the 10th anniversary of his death, the Dahlem family decided to create the Lieutenant Corey Spoon Dahlem Mentorship Award. This award would be presented annually on or near April 4th and would be presented to the GPD member, sworn or civilian, past or present, that best exemplified the practice of mentorship. So for 2022, I'd like to call up Lieutenant Renee Guyan. So I'm going to read the nomination for Lieutenant Guyan. Lieutenant Guyan was one of my FTOs when I started at the department over 12 years ago. Not only did she teach me the fundamentals of how to do the job, but when I passed FTO, she sent me a letter to help guide me over my career. In it were tips on how to be successful in law enforcement. The last paragraph read, "Do the right thing and do it all the time. When you are tired and at the end of your rope and that citizen flags you down for help with something that you just can't be bothered with, take a second and think, if it was your mother or your father, how would you like that police to treat them? Always be a good ambassador of a department." I have kept the letter this whole time and have referred back to it on many occasions. That letter was my go-to in my beginning years. And when I was still trying to figure out how to do the job, it was my baseline for how to teach trainees when I became an FTO. And it helped guide me when I felt defeated at work. Lieutenant Guyan didn't stop mentoring me after FTO. She was always available to call when I was solo and often would meet me to offer advice on whatever hardship I was facing. She helped me in so many ways. So many times I've seen her sit down with officers, myself included, and ask, "What do you want to do?" Then she helps organize a plan for success, whether it's personal or related to law enforcement. Lieutenant Guyan is also the negotiation response team commander. When I joined the team, I was anxious about being on a team where we had to push ourselves out of our comfort zones and be vulnerable in front of each other. However, the environment she created as our leader was spectacular. She made us feel valued and supported. Our team cohesion was like nothing else I've experienced before. I once read the phrase, "Build a team so strong you don't know who the leader is." That was our team because of her. No ego involved. She empowered us to be the best we could be. There are some amazing people in our department and some outstanding mentors. However, Lieutenant Guyan is the greatest mentor I have ever had, not only in my work, but in life. A huge part of who I am today is because of her selflessness and guidance. She has dedicated her career to helping our community. So without further ado, Lieutenant Guyan and the Lieutenant Corey Spoon-Dallam Mentorship Award. Next, Corporal Paul White. And I will read an excerpt from his 19-page nomination. Corporal White is a shining example of what it means to be an excellent law enforcement officer and is an outstanding role model, mentor, and leader, both on and off duty. He is exemplified in his role as a field training officer. Corporal White works tirelessly to impart all of the knowledge and wisdom he developed and gathered through his own experience as a police officer to his trainees. I considered myself lucky to have learned from one of the best GPD has to offer. He's extremely detailed and methodical in his training, and I would often remark that Corporal White would refer to his encyclopedia of knowledge while training. Corporal White's talents don't stop as an FTO. He has a natural ability to lead, and it shines through on every call. While in Corporal White's car, I responded to a few of what we refer to as hot calls. From the moment the call appeared on our screen, Corporal White was already meticulously calculating the best way to respond before even getting dispatched. I came to learn that Corporal White already planned the route, what to do on the call, what questions to ask, what security measures, and what to do to ensure scene safety. Corporal White assumes a leadership role by both directing other officers in times of high stress, but also slowing down and assisting other officers with things such as building clearances, medical care, arrival, perimeters, investigations. Corporal White will never turn another officer away if they should approach him with a question about tactics, investigation, or really any other facet of the job. He works tirelessly to teach his trainees. He works to adapt his training to the specific shortcomings and challenges faced, and works with his trainees on ways to teach them so they can overcome any struggles. I can attest to his character, personality, and morals outside of work. Since being his trainee, our relationship has developed to that of coworkers, and he is now who I would consider a valued and trusted friend. Corporal White is always checking on me and other officers and working to create an environment of camaraderie here at the Gainesville Police Department. He goes above and beyond for citizens and his coworkers and is constantly finding the time to teach, mentor, lead both new and seasoned officers. If at the end of my career, I can look back and say that I was half the cop Corporal White was, I would consider my career a success. I consider myself incredibly lucky that I get to learn and work with Corporal White at this agency. And believe me, he deserves recognition for the amazing mentor, police officer, and human being that he is. And now, the presentation of Officer of the Year for Amanda Figueiredo. In February and September 2022, Officer Figueiredo was nominated and selected for Officer of the Month. This was achieved by consistently responding to calls in her zone, sector, team, and city, in addition to lending a helping hand when possible. Officer Figueiredo proved to be self-motivated while also working well with her coworkers. She continuously sought to expand her knowledge in law enforcement as a profession. Through 2022, and in the spirit of fostering positive relationships within the community, Officer Figueiredo initiated the Hispanic Community Outreach with the overall objective to increase connections with the Hispanic population of Gainesville, which would in turn help with recruitment and serving the community better. The partnerships formed with members of the Hispanic community is a great example of community-oriented policing and the mission of GPD to serve our city through enhanced programs and citizen interactions. In conjunction with her community involvement, Officer Figueiredo trained, prepared, and tried out for SWAT. In preparation for the tryouts, Officer Figueiredo adhered to a schedule that included rigorous workouts, a detailed meal plan, and a consistent review of policies and procedures. Her discipline paid off, and in August of 2022, she was selected as a new member of the Gainesville Police Department SWAT team. During 2022, Officer Figueiredo displayed the type of policing that the Gainesville Police Department should be proud of. She has continuously shown throughout the year that she is a determined officer who has the ability to proactively decrease and prevent crime, all while building community relationships. With all of her involvement in community activities, Officer Figueiredo maintained her standard patrol duties and still managed to apply herself, making numerous violent crime and gun-related arrests. And I can attest to that, and you'll see she'll be the recipient of several other awards. So without further ado, Officer Amanda Figueiredo, Officer of the Year. It's what I said, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. So it's time for us to recognize Captain Finelli. You know, in addition to his comedic activities, he's also being recognized today as a 2020 recipient of the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg Fellow Recipient for Domestic Violence. He travels, quite frankly, all over the country. He has a passion for domestic violence, and he shares that passion not just with us, but with others in the profession of law enforcement, and it's something that he's taken to heart, and we're recognizing him. He's a fellow recipient for the domestic violence. That says quite a bit, particularly coming from John Hawkins. So congratulations to him, and it's the plaque I want to present to him. Okay, come on over here.
I didn't follow my own directions. That wasn't in my script. Okay, is Mr. James Brunel here? No. Officer Stephen Blundell, Sergeant Dave Schramek, Mr. Travis Avera. Moving quite along. All right. The Police Service Award, awarded to Chief Lonnie Scott, Captain Paris Owens, Captain Victoria Young, Officer Sarah Reeves, Officer Chris Bivens, former PIO Graham Glover, Reverend Marie Herring, Michelle Sherfield with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, Pastor Chris Stokes, Leonetta McNeely, Angela Terrell, Pastor Kenyatta Feathers, and Ramona Jackson. Both members of the community and sworn staff at the Gainesville Police Department started an initiative called One Community with an event called Who's in the Box. It took about 4 months of planning to get the event organized and planned through constant meetings, media publications, and executing the event on 2 separate nights. This event focused on bringing attention to violence within the community, which involved our youth. On January 5th and 6th of 2022, the Gainesville Police Department, in partnership with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, local clergy, the Star Center Theater, and McDonald's presented a 2-day dramatic presentation addressing gun violence in our community. The event occurred at the Star Theater and Day Spring Missionary Baptist Church, with a packed house each night, bringing in approximately 200 neighbors from our community. Many youth groups attended this event. It was very impactful and brought the community and the police department together to work on a serious issue within our neighborhoods. The program has made a huge impact, and the plan is to continue these events through the next year. All the individuals listed above played an integral role in the success and presentation of this event. He signed his own certificate. All right, the Police Service Award, awarded to Sergeant Corporal William Goff, Detective Donna Montague, Officer Rebecca Holcomb, Officer Sarah Reeves, don't go anywhere, Sarah, Officer Bobby White, FST Supervisor Olivia Williams, FST Pamela Miles, FST Justin Weaver, Police Officer Michael Harris, and Tri Wimberly. Corporal John Rapper, or then Corporal John Rapper, now Sergeant John Rapper, responded to 2900 Southwest 13th Street, the Stable Select, in reference to a mother of 5 children ranging from 6 months to 11-year-old, finding she was unable to provide for her children. The mother was going through rough times and did not think she could adequately care for the children and was contemplating turning the children over to DCF. The family had already been turned down from St. Francis House and was unable to utilize services at Grace. Corporal Rappa spoke with the director of the St. Francis House and was able to coordinate a room becoming available later that day. While awaiting in the room, Corporal Rappa arranged for donations from the GPD family. Numerous officers, including the entire shift of field service technicians, Sergeant Farrah Lorimer, Officer Sarah Reeves, and Bobby White with the Basketball Cop Foundation, provided money, gift cards, and items for the family. Mr. Wimberly made arrangements for the family to stay past the checkout time and then assisted with possible employment opportunities for the mother. The family was able to get new clothes and food as they transitioned to the St. Francis house. DCF was notified and a caseworker was assigned to assist the family with any future needs. Okay, the Police Service Award, awarded to Code Supervisor Nicole Lardner and Code Officer Samantha Norris. Codes Officer Samantha Norris and Code Supervisor Nicole Lardner were in the area of 3400 Northwest 8th Avenue when they observed a 5-year-old boy who appeared to be unattended dart into traffic from the park. The child seemed to be confused and scared. There were several other park patrons that were trying to catch up with the child and keep him from running out into traffic. The child was nearly struck by vehicles several times. Officer Norris and Supervisor Lardner made several attempts to secure the child, with Supervisor Lardner ultimately being successful and kept the child from being struck by a vehicle. A bystander was able to make contact with the school resource officer and reunification with a caretaker was arranged. Officer Norris and Supervisor Lardner's actions helped save a child from being struck by a vehicle. Okay, so this is one of those incidents I warned you guys about. So for the Police Star, Sergeant John Pandak, Officer Kristen Hall, Officer Thomas Kuplikadu, Officer Aldo Mesa, Officer Khalif Gamble, and Officer Jacob Sowards. For the Police Service Award, Combined Communications Amanda Bruner, Stephanie Budd, Adrian Jones, Victoria King, and Damian Hunter, call taker Chloe Harrier, Shannon Harrier, Amy Labar, Victoria Hudson, Megan Voigt, Cherry Muse, Trinice Johnson, Carissa Coburn. With the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Matthew Jacobson, Lieutenant Brandon Kuttner, Sergeant Monica Herrera, Sergeant Eric Hutchinson, Deputy Mikkel McCoy, Deputy Jeffrey Stadnicki, Deputy Javier Contreras, Deputy Chad Dugan, Deputy Justin Dillon, Deputy Luis Ferrero, Deputy Joel Morris. I believe I missed a dispatcher, Lucy. How do you say the last name? Piggott. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Lucy. Exceptional Incident Response, Lieutenant Rebecca McKenzie, Sergeant John Pandak, Sergeant Lynn Valdez, Sergeant Rob Kennedy, Sergeant Farrah Loramill, Sergeant Chuck Dale, Sergeant Nikoloff, Detective Tom Mullins, Detective Katie Boyette, Investigator Matt Sides, Investigator Roger Pear, Officer Mark Rennick, Officer Thomas Kuplikadu, Officer William Castra, Officer Renisha Spencer, Officer James Rengering, Officer Brendan McCarthy, Officer Amanda Figueredo, Officer Christopher Martinez, Officer Khalif Gamble, Officer Dimitri Wilson, Officer Jacob Sowards, Officer George Perez, Officer Michael Cabot, Officer Casey Walsh, Officer Owen Osborne, Officer Brian Williams, Officer Mark Burwell, Officer Dustin Ryan, Officer Aldo Mesa. On June 24th, 2021, officers responded to the American Legion located at 4700 Northwest 6th Street in reference to an active shooter. Combined Communications Center dispatchers and call takers were able to consolidate and disseminate a tremendous amount of information from the flood of 911 calls. As the officers first arrived, they found complete chaos with many unknown factors such as the number of shooters, victims, and crime scene locations. Disregarding their own safety, they made their way through the streaming crowd to search for victims. They initially located a juvenile male inside on the main dance floor lying in a large pool of blood. Sergeant Pandak and Officer Hall began performing CPR and trauma care. As more officers made it to the scene, another juvenile was located behind a vehicle in front of a building with a gunshot wound to the arm and began receiving immediate medical attention by Officer Kuplikadu. Another female juvenile victim was located just outside of the building to the north with a gunshot wound to the thigh. Officer Mesa quickly applied a tourniquet to his wound. As all of this was occurring, the screaming chaos continued as other juvenile partygoers remained on scene with injured friends and family members, which made caring for the injured even more difficult. More officers then arrived, and another juvenile victim was located in the parking lot behind the structure with a bullet wound to his buttocks. Officer Gamble and Officer Mesa immediately began to render aid to him. Finally, a fifth juvenile victim was located near the U-Haul trailers to the north of the main complex, and he also began to receive prompt care by Officer Sowards. With the victims all being triaged and aid rendered, the crime scene was quickly established and officers efficiently began gathering witness and suspect information. During this incident, it was discovered a black Nissan had been stolen from the scene, and it was suspected that the shooters had been the ones that had stolen it. This information was given over the radio, and Alachua County Sheriff's Deputy Stadnicki found the vehicle, mobile, at 6200 West Newberry Road and attempted to stop it. The vehicle fled from the traffic stop and was abandoned in Cabana Beach, where the occupants then fled on foot. During their flight, one of the suspects disposed of a 9mm handgun. A perimeter was established, and both suspects, who were later determined to be the shooters in this incident, were located, and the handgun was recovered by the responding units from both agencies. The Combined Communications Center did an amazing job navigating this call to include summoning the necessary amount of ambulances needed for the injured persons, broadcasting the related stolen vehicle bolo, not to enter GPD channels, but also ASO channels, while also being able to keep track of all the officers on scene and the numerous requests made by CCC. Tremendous effort and dedication during this call allowed for the agencies of the Gainesville Police Department and the Alachua County Sheriff's Office to work seamlessly together in order to immediately apprehend suspects related to a shooting.
Smile now. 3, 2, 1. All right, one more time. 3, 2, 1. All right, gentlemen, you're done. Ladies, we're taking all the ladies in here. Okay, ladies, come on in. We can put a couple over here too. Oh no, I got this one. I just found this one. I got this one. All right, y'all smile. 3, 2, 1. One more time now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, next group, please.
Making room, making room.
See everybody else. Stand right in front. All right, right here now. 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Police Service Award, Gainesville Fire Rescue Medic Hamal Havis. Hopefully I said that right. Outstanding Unit Citation, Corporal Alicia Davis, Lieutenant Renee Guyan, Officer Michael Rometti, Sergeant Joseph Castor, Retired Officer Steve Bristow, Exceptional Incident Response, Sergeant Tracy Fundenberg, I think I saw Lieutenant Mike West. He was back there. All right. On September 3rd, 2021, several units responded to Oak Crossing due to the reports of multiple people having been stabbed. Officer Angelino and Officer Salafrio were the first units on scene. They located a 17-year-old juvenile in the parking lot who had been stabbed in the hand. Officer Salafrio provided lethal cover, placing himself between the victim and the house where the offender was said to be. Officer Angelino was told by a witness there was a second stabbed victim in the neighboring apartment. Officer Angelino entered the apartment and located the estranged wife of the offender hiding in a closet, holding her 8-year-old daughter. The female had been stabbed multiple times in the face. She and the child were covered in blood, but the child was unharmed. Officer Angelino recognized the urgent need to evacuate them to safety and get them medical attention. Officer Angelino quickly established trust and was able to get them outside. The 17-year-old female and child were evacuated away from the scene to EMS. The female told officers her 4-year-old son was still inside with the offender, and she feared the offender was going to kill the child. Officer Angelino and Officer Salafrio briefly observed the offender in the doorway of the residence holding the 4-year-old child before shutting the front door. He then went to a window where he was briefly seen still holding the child before shutting it. The suspect ignored all commands to surrender and barricaded himself inside with the child. Emergency response teams, patrol units, and on-duty SWAT members established a containment and contact teams. GFR medic Haviz joined one of the contact teams to provide emergency first aid if needed. SWAT and negotiations were reactivated. SWAT arrived and roles were established. Negotiations arrived and roles were established. SWAT and the negotiation response team commander coordinated. Officer Graham established contact with the offender by phone who made demands to kill his wife. Officer Graham, with the assistance of the team, negotiated with the offender over the next hour. During this, the NRT team learned the offender had stabbed himself twice in the chest, had severe mental illness, which he had not been caring for, and had a history of stabbing people. The offender stayed in communication with NRT, but would call multiple other people to get advice. The offender was heavily influenced by his brother, who initially told him not to surrender because the police would kill him. Detective Rusano made contact with the brother and did an amazing job answering all his questions and earning his trust. The brother then called the offender back and advised him to please surrender. After much negotiation, the offender agreed to release the 4-year-old child. He let him go out of the back door. SWAT safely evacuated the child to safety. He was scared, but unharmed. After more negotiation, the offender agreed to surrender and walked out the back door. Upon sight of the SWAT team, the offender froze, started crying, and saying he was scared to continue walking out because he believed law enforcement would kill him. On scene, SWAT members, including Officer Kaimek, did an outstanding job talking to the offender, gaining his trust, and talking him through to surrender. He was then taken into custody without further harm. Distinctive Service Award, Sergeant Rob Kennedy, Sergeant John Mazuka, Officer Christopher Bivens, Officer Michael McKinstry, Officer Justin Snitzeller, Officer Sarah Reeves, Corporal Paul White, Officer Robert White, Exceptional Incident Response, Captain Anthony Ferrara, Lieutenant Timothy Durst, Lieutenant Charles Ward, Detective Katie Boyette, Detective Tom Mullins, Detective Amanda Rodonis, Officer William Castra, Officer Emery Kaimeg, Officer Dalton Ripley, Investigator Roger Parr, and Investigator Matthew Sides. On December 4th, 2020, several officers responded to the area of Highland Court Manor in reference to a shooting. Officers arrived to find that the suspect was actively shooting at his neighbors' houses. It was also discovered that the suspect had taken the life of his wife and infant child. Sergeant Kennedy, Officer Paul White, Officer Snitzeller, Officer Bobby White, Sergeant Mazuka, Officer McKinstry, Officer Reeves, and Officer Bivens ran toward the gunfire and challenged the suspect at gunpoint. At the sight of officers, the suspect immediately dropped his weapon and was taken into custody. Units then located the female victim shot in the front yard. Officer Reeves and Officer Fuentes performed CPR first aid until EMS arrived. However, she was pronounced deceased on the scene. Units also located a 3-month-old male victim fatally shot in the backyard. Officer Andrew Griffith, Officer Pat Donnelly, Officer Chuck Talton, Lieutenant Marquita Brown, Officer Craig Farrell, Officer William Castro, Officer Emery Koenig, Officer Dalton Ripley, and Sergeant Joe Sin were on scene within minutes of the incident. They immediately conducted safety sweeps, located evidence, preserved the crime scene, and made contact with witnesses and victims. From the witnesses and suspects' statements, it was learned that there were supposed to be 2 other small children at the house. Detective Tom Mullins, Captain Anthony Ferrara, Lieutenant Charles Ward conducted a secondary sweep of the house, where Detective Mullins located a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old hiding under a bed. The children were taken to Shands for medical evaluation. Officer Velasquez escorted them later to the CAC, where Detective Katie Boyette and Detective Amanda Rodanis assisted in interviewing them. Lieutenant Tim Durst and Sergeant Kennedy remained on scene to preserve the crime scene and prevent other officers from having to witness the atrocity. Investigator Matt Sides and Investigator Roger Parr forensically processed the scene. Needless to say, this call was devastating to many members of our department and the community. After this call, many officers went to the funeral, met with neighbors in the area to help process the loss together. They organized events that included buying Christmas gifts and items needed for the children to be more comfortable in their new home with their grandparents. Many officers are still in contact with the children and family to this day.
No, I haven't. I just in case read them out.
Outstanding unit citation: Captain Victoria Young, Lieutenant Timothy Durst, Lieutenant Renee Guyan, Lieutenant Summer Kirkow, Lieutenant Lonnie Scott Jr., Lieutenant Charles Ward, Sergeant Robert Kennedy, don't go anywhere, Rob, Corporal Alicia Davis, Corporal Stephanie Pridgeon, now Sergeant, and former PIL Graham Glover. These 20 individuals came together to develop better procedures after a critical incident has occurred. And as you can tell by the last award I read, it's greatly needed. The group was led by Corporal Alicia Davis, who had bi-weekly meetings to discuss the topics, develop the appropriate paperwork, and to put into place training that would benefit us in the future. The team involved individuals from all different bureaus within the department with varied experience. They consulted with the unions and coordinated with the training staff. The results of this committee was the development of 2 critical incident checklists for those incidents for staff to follow. The recommendations also include several amendments to policy and a pamphlet of what to expect for the officers involved in the incidents. Other topics covered were the CISM, or officer wellness, aspects of these types of incidents. The committee's main goal was to make the next incident better than the last. It involved creating several documents to assist those who may not be aware of what will happen in these events. From a department perspective, the project is innovative and involves a lot of collaboration with many different individuals. The impact of this project will be for years to come and will have lasting impact once many of us are retired. All the forms and pamphlets have been implemented onto the internet, and topics are being incorporated into current in-service and roll call trainings.
Here we go, right here. 3, 2, 1, and one more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Captain Young, please stay. Captain Victoria Young, Lieutenant Lisa Scott, Sergeant Joe Castor, Officer Bobby White with the Basketball Cop Foundation for the Excellence in Community Policing Award. Now, this award involved many members of the department and included 76 sworn and civilian members. In October 2022, Captain Victoria Young approached GPD members, sworn and civilian, and community members to create an innovative approach to bring awareness to gun violence. During the month of December 2022, together, those members worked to host 2 weeks of events through the Gainesville Community or Gainesville United program.
All right, everybody here? 3, 2, 1.
Well, no, she's not there. Thanks, yeah. Award of Excellence, Officer Amanda Figueredo. On February 19th, 2022, Officer Figueredo conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle where the driver fled on foot. Officer Figueredo gave chase, and once captured, the suspect began to physically resist and fight with her. Officer Figueredo was alone in a wooded area and still struggling with the suspect while waiting for backup to arrive. It was evident that the suspect was making attempts to retrieve something from a bag he was carrying. Officers arrived and the suspect was taken into custody without further incident. Search incident to arrest revealed a pistol with an extended magazine, a large amount of narcotics, and cash inside the bag. Award of Excellence, Sergeant Shelley Postal. Corporal Postal took on the responsibility of bringing the Take Me Home project to the Gainesville Police Department. The Take Me Home project is a database designed to assist law enforcement officers by utilizing limited name, date of birth information, physical descriptions, key characteristics, and/or photograph to determine who the person is, where they live, in order to safely return them to the appropriate location. This database would be used when officers encountered neighbors who were unable to communicate the necessary information due to being disoriented, unable to communicate, or struggling to speak. Out of a sincere desire to better serve our community neighbors, Corporal Postal was able to guide the introduction of the TMH project to GPD. Through updates and its adaptation to GPD, and on to its successful implementation at the department. The Police Star Award, given to retired Officer Steve Bristow. On May 24th, 2021, officers responded to the area of 1900 Southwest 13th Street, where they found a woman on the 3rd story of the parking garage holding a small child over the ledge. It was evident that the woman was in the midst of a mental crisis and possibly in a manic state. Officer Osborne and Officer Bristow ran up 3 flights of stairs to reach the woman. Officer Osborne was able to speak to the woman, calm her, and convince her to step away from the edge of the parking garage while still holding the child. Officer Osborne continued to speak to the woman and simultaneously develop a plan with Officer Bristow to rescue the child. Both officers were able to rescue the child and get the victim medical attention. The quick actions of the officers ensured a positive ending to this harrowing situation. Wait, don't go anywhere. Wait, Steve. Steve's second police star. It's a long time period. On September 19th, 2020, Detective Steve Bristow was off duty at home and noticed his neighbor outside and bent over a baby in their front yard. Without hesitation, Detective Bristow ran outside to assist. The child's mother had begun CPR and told Detective Bristow that the baby was having an allergic reaction and that she administered medication through an EpiPen. However, the baby was still in distress. Detective Bristow evaluated the baby and determined that there was an airway obstruction. Detective Bristow administered back blows and was eventually able to dislodge the obstruction. Detective Bristow's quick action saved the life of a child. Okay. Police Star, Reserve Sergeant Dr. John Slish, more affectionately termed Doc. Reserve Sergeant Dr. John Slish in late 2009 took over the SWAT position as its medical director and functioned as the team's medic. Additionally, Dr. Slish trained both GPD and ASO SWAT teams and provided consistent medical oversight over the last decade. In 2012, Doc Slish sponsored himself through the Basic Police Recruit Academy, which led him to obtaining a state law enforcement officer certification. Dr. Slish obtained the rank of sergeant in 2022. During the past 13 years, Sergeant Slish would arrange his work schedule around our training days to be available for both agencies during these entire 10 to 12-hour days. Sergeant Slish, let me remind you, he's a doctor too. Sergeant Slish routinely dedicates 24 to 50 hours a month, depending on the volume of warrants call-outs, over his 13 years of dedicated selfless community service. During this time, he was responsible for assisting the team commanders with officer rescue scenarios and using our individual first aid kit that is now found on every officer's body armor. During this training, Doc Slish taught us how to treat injured officers and safely extract them and use the self or buddy aid. Dr. Slish was instrumental in meeting with the city agency budget personnel and proving why these kits were necessary and becoming the industry standard for not just officer treatment, but also treating civilian injuries. This can also occur during a high-risk warrant service. Both agencies are now outfitted with them for every officer or deputy. In addition to the 4 monthly training days Sergeant Slish would attend, Sergeant Slish would also respond from home in his private vehicle to SWAT team callouts, which included barricaded subjects, hostage situations, and even active shooters. While this was not optimal, the city could not provide him with a marked patrol car. After about 3 years, Dr. Slish put himself through the entire police academy and then the FTO program to become a fully sworn solo status officer. Sergeant Slish has been an invaluable asset to not only the Gainesville Police Department, but also the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, to our neighbors, and to our community. Dr. Slish is uncommon amongst the common. These guys are on shift, so I don't know if they made it out, but Officer Ethan Seaver and Officer Justin Schnitzler. The Police Star, Officer Ethan Seaver, Officer Justin Schnitzler. On October 8th, 2022, several officers responded to the area of the Circle K located at 1515 North Main Street in reference to a shooting. Officer Seaver located the victim lying face down in the parking lot, bleeding profusely and barely breathing. Officer Seaver directed other officers into the area while providing first aid to the victim. Officer Schnitzler arrived and helped apply a tourniquet to one area of injury. Officer Seaver located another gunshot wound and applied a second tourniquet. The actions of Officer Seaver and Officer Schnitzler saved the life of the victim. Police Star, Officer Freddie Tirado, Officer Jesse Herringshaw. On December 30th, 2022, Officer Tirado and Officer Herringshaw responded to a medical emergency. The victim was found by a friend to be unresponsive and have agonal breathing. Officer Tirado and Officer Herringshaw immediately began CPR until relieved by EMS. The victim was transported to Shands for medical treatment. Shands medical personnel confirmed that the quick actions of Officer Tirado and Officer Herringshaw saved the victim's life. Officer Ross Shugan, Police Star. On August 5th, 2022, while assigned to Talbot Elementary as the school resource officer, Officer Shugan was present with a teacher while she was eating in the school cafeteria. Without warning, the teacher began to turn red and purple and became non-responsive. She fell to the ground and stopped breathing and had a minimal pulse. Before the teacher fell to the ground, she pointed to her throat. Officer Shugan began administering the Heimlich maneuver. After several moments, she began coughing and started regaining consciousness. Officer Shugan's quick actions saved the life of a teacher. Let me make sure. This officer is also on shift. Officer Thomas Kuplakadu, such is the life of a patrol officer. Officer Isaac Sutton, Distinctive Service Award. On July 17th, 2022, Officer Sutton and several other officers were in the area of downtown Gainesville for bar closing and crowd control. At approximately 02:34 hours, several shots were heard, and Officer Sutton observed subjects shooting out of a vehicle. Some of those shots went towards the direction of officers in the area, and Officer Sutton relayed on the radio that he saw the muzzle flash and was attempting to catch up to the vehicle. Without regard to his own safety, Officer Sutton pursued the vehicle with authorization, is in quotes here, which is hilarious. All right, the vehicle fled at a high rate of speed and drove in a northeasterly direction. Officer Sutton maintained visual contact and updated other officers of the vehicle's location. Officer Sutton attempted to conduct a traffic stop, but the driver refused to stop and continued to evade officers. The driver attempted to make a turn, and due to speed and environment, the vehicle collided with a tree. All the occupants fled while Officer Sutton and other officers gave chase. With the use of our GPD drone, ASO Air 1, K-9, Walsh, and Stern, and several perimeter units, the 4 vehicle occupants were eventually apprehended after an exhausting search. The crashed vehicle was recovered, and one search, officers located 2 firearms, narcotics, ammunition, and a ski mask. Officers confirmed that the occupants who were apprehended were the same ones that he saw running from the vehicle who were involved in that initial shooting. Distinctive Service Award, Officer Aaron Armstrong. On January 17th, 2023, at about 16:40 hours, multiple units responded to Sweetwater Square Apartments to reports of a subject shooting at 2 victims. After firing his gun, the suspect ran away from the area. Officers located him a short distance away from the apartment complex, where he fled again. Officer Armstrong located the suspect running away from the area and ordered him to stop. He refused, kept running past her vehicle as she was driving into the area. Officer Armstrong exited her car and gave chase. She caught up to and tackled him. While trying to take him into custody, she realized he was still armed with the firearm. She did not disengage and fought the suspect for the gun, eventually disarming him. Maintaining her composure, she gave out excellent information on the radio, collected the firearm, and made it safe. A short time later, GPD K-9 officer arrived with assisting units. Officer Armstrong maintained the last seen point and directed the K-9 unit to that point. A short time later, the now unarmed suspect was taken into custody without incident. All right. For this award, because it's the highest reward a Gainesville Police Department officer can receive, I am going to read the definition. So this is for the Medal of Valor. The Medal of Valor is the Gainesville Police Department's highest honor. It is presented to a department member who performs an act that poses imminent danger to his or her life and displays outstanding bravery and courage and protects the life of another. Medal of Valor, Sergeant Joe Castor, Officer Craig Farrell, Officer Haley Miller, Sergeant Shelley Postal, Officer Ross Shugan, Officer Robert White. With this also, Distinctive Service Award, Sergeant Christopher Cardwell, Corporal Alicia Davis, Officer Gerald Delancey, Deputy Carlton Litzkow, Sergeant John Mazuka, Deputy Lance Pallett, Officer Sarah Reeves, Deputy Uri Swiley, Lieutenant Charlie Ward, Officer Chad Welch, Corporal Paul White. On October 5th, 2021, several officers responded to Museum Walk in reference to an armed disturbance. Notes indicated a male suspect pointed a gun at the head of his ex-girlfriend and at another person. Investigation revealed the night prior there was another armed disturbance where the suspect discharged his firearm. Numerous felony charges were confirmed to include aggravated assault, battery, and attempted armed burglary. A BOLA was issued for the suspect and vehicle. Lieutenant Ward located the suspect, who fled in the vehicle. Due to the severity of the charges, a pursuit was initiated. The pursuit was quickly terminated as the suspect drove toward the heavily congested UF campus. Detective Bunovich, who was in an unmarked vehicle, located and followed the suspect to the Cedar Grove neighborhood. The suspect pulled into a driveway. Detective Bunovich and other officers gave commands to surrender. The commands were ignored. The suspect ran into the residence and barricaded himself. A perimeter and contact teams were established. That contact team included Officer Shugan, Officer Bobby White, Sergeant Postal, Officer Farrell. Contact team on the rear of the residence, Corporal Paul White, Officer Delancey, Officer Welch, Officer Perez, and ASO Deputy Pallett. Sergeant Castor was talking to a large number of community members north of the suspect residence to gather intel. Officer Miller gave verbal PA announcements for approximately 30 minutes in an effort to have the suspect safely exit the residence. These efforts were ignored by the suspects. The NRT team was notified and responded. As they were setting up, the suspect yelled from inside the residence, "If I'm coming out shooting." The suspect then exited the residence via the front door and fired multiple shots from his handgun at the front contact team. There were community members and occupied residents in the line of fire behind that contact team. The shots impacted the ground around the contact team. Due to the threat of deadly force from the suspect, Officer Shugan and Sergeant Castor responded by firing their duty weapons at the suspect. The suspect was struck by at least one round and retreated back inside the residence. During the incident, Sergeant Postal sustained a wound to her leg from one of the rounds fired by the suspect. The front contact team and additional contact team were joined by Officer Miller, Detective Bunovich, Officer Welter, Officer Reeves, Corporal Davis, Detective Rusana, Sergeant Cardwell, Sergeant Mazuka, ASO Deputy Litzkow, and Deputy Swiley. A short time later, the suspect exited the front door of the house, yelling he had been shot. The contact team gave verbal commands to the suspect, which were ignored. Officer Welter, utilizing SWAT-issued enhanced visual optics, was able to make sure the suspect did not have the gun in his hand. Sergeant Cardwell coordinated two teams to safely take the suspect into custody. Officer Miller, Sergeant Postal, and Corporal Davis rendered first aid to the suspect, who was bleeding profusely from a wound to his head. EMS arrived on scene and transported the suspect to the emergency room with a law enforcement escort. Officers maintained the security of the scene and proved support to the community members. Medal of Valor awarded to Officer Jeffrey Bailey. Lieutenant Summer Kirkhow will accept on his behalf. If she's still here. Lieutenant Lisa Scott will accept on his behalf. Never make eyes with the speaker. Right. On December 13th, 2020, Officer Bailey was dispatched to the area of 1600 Northwest 34th Street in reference to a multi-vehicle collision. Witnesses stated that one driver was entrapped and the vehicle was fully engulfed with flames. Officer Bailey, without hesitation or concern for his own safety, approached the vehicle and observed the driver unconscious, unable to free himself, and in danger of being consumed by the flames. Officer Bailey's first attempt to free the driver from the vehicle was unsuccessful. Officer Bailey did not give up and was able to gain access to the vehicle, free the driver, and drag him to safety, certainly saving his life. Medal of Valor, Officer Robert Angus, Officer Benjamin Mullins. Lieutenant Lonnie Scott Jr. will accept on their behalf. On September 24th, 2022, Officer Angus and Officer Mullins responded to a traffic crash with injuries, entrapment, This is the last award, right? So we figure, right? That doesn't.
Rob said, Mike, you had some of that punch in there.
All right, where were we? Entrapment and fire. Officer Angus and Officer Mullins ran to the vehicle that was fully engulfed with flames and began to pull the unconscious driver out of the vehicle and drag him to safety. The driver was transported to the hospital where he was listed as critical but expected to make a full recovery. The selfless actions of those officers saved the driver's life. And now for our benediction and closing, Reverend Graham Gover.
Two times in a week, sir, you got me at the very end of the program. I see where I rate. In the Christian community, this Sunday marks Palm Sunday. It's the beginning of Holy Week. It's when Jesus came triumphantly into Jerusalem to begin what many would say is the most important week of the year. King Jesus that week. You have before you tonight people who serve as the Lord has taught them to serve. People who put their lives on the line each and every day. As we leave tonight, give thanks for all of the awardees, but give thanks for all of those in law enforcement tonight in this community. For as our Lord will save us, as our Lord forgives us, it is these officers that preserve us here every day in this great community. Let us pray. Almighty and Heavenly Father, your mercies are new to us every day, and we give you thanks for all of those persons tonight that have been recognized for their service to this great city, to this department, and to those who serve with this department. Lord, keep all those in law enforcement under your watchful care. Bless them and their families. Bless those who guide them. Bless their children and their spouses. Above all, Lord, tonight we ask that you would forgive us, that you would strengthen us, and that you would keep us as we seek to do your will and as we rejoice for the sacrifice that you gave for us. We ask this as we do all things in your holy and precious name. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. Please feel free to mingle and eat the rest of the food. I'm sure there's plenty, but that will conclude our ceremony.